Hello, where have you been living? At the OOD. OOD? OOD? What's OOD? OOD. I know, right? What's OOD? They've been around for a long time, and today we're going to talk about OOD, Out of Our Depth. A funny name for a band that is certainly not out of their depth because they've been one of the most consistent people making music in the Psy genre for quite a while, since 1996, which was their first album, Alive, up until the last album, which was 2012, and I can't wait for the next one. This is a 4 to 5 piece group, mostly 4 people. There's been other members of the band who have been in and out and done things with them and gone off and done other things too. And some of the members definitely have been involved and do other things. But I want to talk about these guys because out of all the acts that came and went out of the Goa side genre, these guys are one of the ones who've stuck around and have gotten better and have always been pretty fairly consistent with the kind of quality music that that we demand as listeners. I mean, the heyday of Goa and Psytrance, I would say, is over, and some people are still rocking, and a lot of them have turned into just sort of parodies of themselves, have really strayed away from any kind of good quality music that's really relevant or has evolved over time. But not these guys. These guys are just fantastic. The music that they make is always good, and their production quality is very high, and they definitely deserve more merit and attention than I think they get. They've been popular, they've toured all over the world for sure, and they've played festivals and they've played out for years, but they don't. When I first heard about them, there was a lot of people who I knew who listened to the kind of, some people who I knew who listened to the kind of music that I like. But, not a lot of people knew who these guys were. You might have heard a track or two of theirs and been like, maybe they knew who they were, maybe they didn't. But to focus on, everything that they've done in one video, I'll give it a shot. I'll try to do it, try to give some credence to these guys. When I say quality and consistent, what I mean is these guys do their own thing. They have their own style of psychedelic trance, not in the traditional sense either. This isn't your typical verse, chorus, verse, giant crescendo synth lines going into a huge melodic plateau that will blow your mind, or things like that. I mean, they do have some of those things going on, but mostly the non-predictability in electronic music is something that really bothers me. Like if you can tell it's gonna do something and it does it, and it just kind of does it in like a kind of a whimper. It doesn't do it very productively. That's about where I usually hit the track skip button and go on to the next one. There's a few artists who I could talk to who do that consistently, and somehow people love it. The low-hanging fruit that we're constantly being told that we need to listen to and consume is really just disappointing and depressing and lame and overdone and overplayed, and these guys don't do that. They're non-genre pigeonholing kind of a group, which is to say that they don't release an album or singles that are just like a dance floor filler, or just something to put at the peak of your set or something like that. The albums that they put out, they're not full of dark nighttime stormers and morning music and things like that. And if DJs are putting them into their sets, they're probably, I would guess that DJs probably aren't putting these guys into their sets, which on the one hand I can understand because DJs really just only play what's popular, and that's not a new thing. DJs have always just played what's popular. Not all DJs, but most DJs have done that, and I mean, that was always disappointing. I mean, DJ culture in itself is really just sort of elitist and pretentious. And so they wouldn't be too encouraged to play music that isn't already like super popular in the first place. On the other hand, they what did I just say? They wouldn't. So they would do that if they were playing things that were they fit OOD and other people into a DJ set if they were already playing a DJ set that was already off the cuff, kind of left field kind of music. I mean, the hippies don't really care about quality music, in my opinion. Like the real hardcore Psy people, they get all bent out of shape for Etnica and Palladians and Asterix and stuff like that. And like Etnica, they're still around. They make good music, but they just sort of, like unless you look like a rock band, like the way Astral Projection stands in front of the sunset with their wraparound Oakleys on, all aloof, like they're in a rock band, then you just know that what's going to be inside the CD is pretty much just going to be like just fodder for predictability and, a big giant letdown, And I mean, rock bands should do that, rock bands should stand around and look at each other and act all weird, and that works really well for a rock band. But for an electronic music act, like you want to see them playing out, pictures of them, maybe just like hopping around and looking silly, doing something. I don't know, but I mean that just doesn't work to me. That just doesn't work for me. But at any rate, these guys are a four. Did I already say that they're a four-piece? So they're a four-piece. They play mostly in the box music, which is to say in the computer. They use outboard gear. They use synthesizers. They use live instruments. And they do their own thing. They don't just make bangin' trance. They make really interesting, very playful, very creative, and not even real emotive. Like some parts can be, sure, but mostly the creativity comes in the structure and what they do and what they don't do. I mean, you hear a lot of psychedelic trance, like where you at the end of the measure, you hear everything pass through the high pass filter, and it's going to break down, and then nothing happens, or else there's a big giant build up, and then the drop comes and nothing. And when you're dancing to a set or you're dancing at a show, you need to keep that momentum going. You want that momentum to continue and not to be broken up into the whole stop start BS that you hear so much. I'm so sick of it. But at any rate, these guys are psychedelic without the Goa cheese. They're funny, which is cheesy, but they take the humor, out of things like samples and things like that, and they integrate it into the tracks. Or else it's just kind of like a funny part, it's not just like Mars Needs Women, or samples about the drug took effect and everybody freaked out, not really stuff like that. Let's see, their rhythms have always been really clever. Bass lines change, there's no real screaming lead synths that build up into a crescendo, which is good because that's just overdone and it's overplayed and it's really just over. Alive, came out in 1996. It was mostly live versions of the tracks they had on hand at the time, and it's continually mixed, and that's really neat because it's kind of like a mixtape, you know, where every one just kind of blends into the other. There's these funny ha-ha samples that are just like little laughs or whatever that they put in between. So, you know, that's you know, it's sort of like a joke to me, you know, like which track is it? Well, they all start off with ha 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 ha, you know, kind of like kind of like they're just kind of messing with you, and that's, you know, I'd say that's clever, you know, I'd say that's a little unexpected, you know, and it's definitely a stomper. You know, there's a lot of acid 303 in that album. It's very driving, but it's also very original. You know, it doesn't. I mean, for 1996, you know, this was the heyday of Goa Trance, and these guys started making music. And with the Alive album, it's not like a Goa album or even like a Psytrance album. You know, I mean, it kind of is like a Psytrance album, but it's not, you know, that traditional Psytrance kind of a sound. Breathing Range, the blue one, that one, came out in '99, and that's the oddball one, if you ask me. It's about half full on and half ambient or down tempo, which is really just sort of, it's the only album that they put out where they did something like that, you know. And after, you know, 4 or 5 tracks of super stomping madness, it's like it's a cool down with some nice, real kind of down tempo-y stuff, which is nice, you know. And they haven't really done that since, and I don't think they should. I think they should continue with the discourse of which they've or the narrative, so to speak, of that they've maintained throughout afterwards. Free Range, the one there with the broken, that one, the one with the broken egg on it, it came out in 2006, and that one is just great. That one will stay in your CD player forever, you know, as far as I'm concerned, because the whole thing is like, it's another one of those continually mixed ones, you know. It was when they started to polish, you know, their craft and their sound, you know. It's almost like rocks at a rock tumbler, you know. The first 2 albums were partially polished, you know, very good, not unpolished or raw or anything, but rawer than anything else, rawer than any of the, more raw than the releases that they put out afterwards. Forethought, they gave us that in 2008, and that's a really good one too. That one is a very smart, not too funny, you know, but also, you know, it's very smart and clever. Very polished OOD sound. And then You Think You Are, the green one, that one, came out in 2012, and you know, that was 8 years ago, and I can't wait for another one. And You Think You Are is my favorite by far. It's just so well done. It's so playful and creative, you know, and playful in that it changes a lot, and tracks, you know, they all blend into one another again, and they do that thing so well. You know, the OOD sound is like, you know, it's got that polished new production that you started to hear after about the early 2000s, but it doesn't have that super predictable, cheesy, progressive thing that just took off like the way that it did, you know. It's like these guys take everything that's good and everything that works and everything that's relevant and that's fun, and they jam it into an album, and it works really well. It's very creative, and I'm squinting a lot because there's a window right over here. You know, I mean, this is a band who's evolved in spite of the genre and the kind of music that they came out of. You know, they've always done their own thing. They've always been independent, and they've always given us good quality music. You know, and to see an act evolve that successfully over time, is inspiring, because there haven't been a whole lot of people who have stuck around since the good old days and are still giving us quality music or something different, or just doing their own thing and doing it well. Like if you saw that in art, you see a lot of that in art. Well, actually, you don't see a lot of that in art, is what I'm trying to say. It's like in the postmodern age, what does even art mean anymore? And in the sort of postmodern age of music, it's almost like, well, what does music even mean anymore? With the advent of dubstep and EDM, which just need to go back where they came from, and I really just dislike EDM in every way. There's really nothing good about it. There's really nothing creative or fresh about it. It's fresh in that it's like EDM takes all the things that are bad and predictable and pretentious about electronic music and just cranks up the volume. And if you're 13 years old and you've never heard it before, of course it's just going to make you impressed. But over time, you're going to realize that. Hopefully, you're going to realize that it's just crap. I mean, I think back to when I was first starting to get into techno, and that's what they called it before there was really names for genres. Like if it was electronic music, it was just techno. It didn't matter what it was. If it was trance, techno, acid trance, down tempo, or Goa or anything like that, it was all just techno. And a lot of the early stuff was really just rudimentary and really not that interesting. Of course, taking into consideration limitations of gear and technology, which definitely got better over time. It was almost like, how do we use these machines? How do we use this technology to take it and make good quality music that's actually relevant and has a narrative and says something and isn't predictable and pretentious. Not OOD, not these guys. These guys have always made consistently good music that works, that is clever, that is playful, that has evolved over time. And I would love to see more music from these guys until I'm dead, hopefully. The worst thing about OOD, and this isn't even probably their fault, is that there hasn't been enough vinyl releases, and pressing vinyl is expensive. I understand that. The whole first album was released as singles, 12-inch singles, on different labels like Psychedelic, Completely Cabbage, Phantasm. So you could, they're hard to find, but if you could find all the 12 inches that came out at that time, then you would have the whole first album on vinyl, which I have one or two singles of theirs. In fact, the first, I don't want to fall. The first OOD I ever heard was this one. This is the Hairstyles of the Cosmos 12-inch, and these tracks weren't on any album. If this was meant to be a separate 12-inch or part of the Alive catalog at the time, either way, this is the first OOD that I ever heard. And this one is just like, it's madness. It's tasteful madness, They pour the madness into the filter. It comes out as organized chaos. That's still madness. And I can't explain how they did that so successfully. It's just the people who are making it just are clever enough that they are able to do that so well. But this was the first OOD that I ever heard, and instantly grabbed me. Instantly, it was so much fun. I never heard anything like this before. And according to them, they were the first ones to take a full-on track like this one, a full-on psychedelic track, and have it break down into a dub downbeat, in the middle of it, instead of like a breakdown into nothing or a breakdown into just some, atmosphere or some kind of soundscape. They break it down and it goes into like a dub trance wobble, that builds up into a really nice melodic crescendo. You know, one of the only times they ever did that on their in their music. You know, they've done it before, but not really a whole lot. You know, but and so that's why this one stands out so well. It was This is probably still available. I bought this in San Francisco at Frequency 8 on Haight Ashbury Street, and if that's, I doubt that's even still there. But I mean, when I walked in and I saw this, and then I heard, you know, ooh, it was mine. You know, so thank you, Frequency 8, for that. What else can I say about these guys? They're just good. You know, they're just so good. I mean, you know, they don't. I mean, they don't look like that corporate logo bullshit either. I mean, the album art looks like actual album art. There's no like, you know, they have a logo that's their name, but it's always been the same thing, you know. And it doesn't look like, you know, a Progressive ad or a Visa ad or a Budweiser ad or some stupid ad where the group has taken their logo and made it all about a flashy logo, you know, or something like that, you know. And like I said before, if you stay away from groups that do that, because, you know, it just looks like it's, you know, it just looks like it's sponsored by some big company, and then when you open the CD and listen to it, that's what you're gonna hear. You're gonna hear music that sounds like it was sponsored by Fox or some crap like that, you know. These guys don't do that, you know. These guys deserve a lot more attention and a lot more credence and credit for what they've done. And the fact that they've stayed consistent over time is very important, because you just don't see that anymore. You just don't see consistency, you know. I mean, I'm sure that there's probably some angst or probably some resentment, you know, from people who've been around since the good old days and have probably abandoned psychedelic trance in lieu of other things, you know. Some of them have, you know, they're not doing psytrance anymore. They're doing bands, or they're doing techno now, or they're doing other things, you know. And maybe on the side they'll do a little bit of psy, and, you know, just to let us know that, yeah, they can still do it, but not a whole lot of people. It's probably hard to tour all over the world, you know. You probably don't make a whole lot of money from playing at festivals and things like that, you know, with promoters taking your money and artists not getting paid, and crowds of dirty hippies rubbing their hemp crystal necklaces to conjure the Goa spirit. It probably gets old after a while, and if you've ever been to a Goa party, then you know. Goa parties are okay. They're, you know, back in the day they were a lot of fun, you know. It was, you know, an outdoor rave, you know, and they just don't do it like they used to. But anyway, OOOD, Out of Our Depth. How deep can you bleep? Pretty goddamn deep, if you ask me. Check these guys out. There's a few of their tracks on my channel. Again, thank you for subscribing, to all my subscribers. If you're finding these for the first time, fantastic. Comments in the bucket below, and I hope everybody has a good day, and I will see you next time for more.